What do people need to know about nutrition and about their relationship with food?
Nutrition in general is massively overcomplicated. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it definitely is simple.
People feel guilty about the food that they eat a lot. How do we get rid of this guilt around food?
Weight Watchers, Slimming World. Of course you're going to feel guilty after you eat a food when it's labelled as a sin.
We know in Ireland that we have an obesity issue when it comes to our children. Are there ways that we can, as a family, help ourselves? Welcome to today's episode. I'm thrilled to have Josh Percival with us, a dedicated dietitian who brings a wealth of expertise from his work in his own clinic at Through, which means
Change, the Irish for change.
The Irish for change, with CrossFit 536 and mybestweight.ie. Josh is passionate about guiding people on their journeys to optimal health, using nutrition as a health gain rather than a weight loss tool, which I love. I love that. I might steal that tagline.
Go.
Josh, delighted to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
We've loads to discuss. I suppose my audience is a lot of middle-aged women, I would say. And by middle-aged ladies, I mean 40 plus. But there's loads of people out there that would love a little bit of guidance around nutrition and diet, etc. So tell me how you got into it in the first instance and about your qualifications, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, not to ramble on a bit myself. But I always had, since I was about 16, 17, when I was in school, our strength and conditioning coach was very good and kind of got me into the gym. We were lucky enough to have a gym in school. So I started training in school and always had an interest in kind of exercise and movement. So I did exercise science in University of Limerick as a 4-year degree. And I was always more interested in kind of the health modules. But after that, then I decided to do a master's in exercise physiology over in Loughborough University, which is kind of a big sport university, probably one of the leading sport universities in the world. And again, obviously a lot of the modules were performance focused, all about athletes. How can athletes get that extra 1% better? But again, I was more interested in the health side of things. So I always knew this, and I came back to Ireland and I started working in a gym in Blackrock, and you obviously had the owner, Albert, on, who his podcast was released yesterday. Would recommend everyone to listen to it. It's very good. And started working with Albert, doing a lot of personal training and nutrition coaching. And then COVID happened, and I didn't really have much of a job. I did a bit of online work for the gym. But I kind of was thinking, like, I'm so interested in this health side of things. Nutritionists, although many of them are amazing, you're not regulated as nutritionists, so anyone could call themselves a nutritionist. Like I once heard a story of someone getting their dog, registered as a nutritionist, right? So it just takes a small online course to become a nutritionist. So I was like, I wouldn't mind being a little bit more. Maybe I could give a go at this dietetics thing. And to be a dietitian, you have to do a 2-year master's or a 4-year undergraduate. So I did a 2-year master's in dietetics. And yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. And now I'm working as a dietitian in Blackrock in a gym there where I run my own clinic called Through, as you said. And I work for a company called My Best Weight.
Okay. And what do people need to know about nutrition and about food and about their relationship with food?
God, sure. Where do I start?
I know. But there is so much information out there. There are so much rules, like is it the 5-2 rule, or is it the, eat this rule, eat that rule? How much protein should people be getting? Are carbohydrates bad? Is intermittent fasting something we should be all doing? So many questions, Josh. And I'm just going to sit back here now and bask in your wisdom.
Okay. Do you have a specific question about that, or do you want me to
I think let's start on intermittent fasting, because it seems to be the buzzword at the minute, and I want to know how good that is for people. Should they be doing it, or what? Okay,
so intermittent fasting is what I like to call intermittent feasting, right? Yeah. So you go through a big fast and then you stuff all the food into you as much as possible, and most people use it as a way to lose weight. And there's different types of intermittent fasting. You could do 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. You can switch it up however you like. Most of us do a fast anyway at nighttime when we sleep. And there's no evidence in humans to support that intermittent fasting is better than any other diet for weight loss. And there's actually no evidence to support any diet is better than any other diet for weight loss.
There's no evidence for intermittent fasting.
There's no evidence in humans that it's better for weight loss.
Okay.
And there's some, rodent studies that show that it can possibly be better for our health, but that's not proven in human trials. So I've never recommended anyone to do intermittent fasting.
Oh my God, I'm just so glad that was our first opening question. Guys, you can all stop the intermittent fasting.
Nutrition in general is massively overcomplicated. All right. And the longer I'm in the industry, we'll call it an industry, or working in it, the more I realize this. Like, the more I realize how simple it is. That doesn't mean it's easy, but it definitely is simple. And with nutrition, if you could just ignore all the stuff on social media, like including myself, right? You'd be better off just deleting the apps and go to like a website like HSE or healthyireland.ie and follow the guidelines that they suggest.
But they're so fucking boring, Josh. We want a quick fix. We want to know. We want to eat meat for 7 days a week, and then then we can binge on carbs. Like it's almost like we feel that we're doing something, or people feel that they're doing something tangible and right if they're following a plan that sounds a little bit difficult or sexy.
Yeah, I understand completely.
Okay.
And I suppose when people come to me, they this kind of gets into this all or nothing mindset. So they want a plan and they want strict rules. But when you set yourself, so what I like to teach people about is a bit about mindset and nutrition, right? So when they come into me, we'll often, pretty much every single person I see, we talk about a continuum thinking mindset. Have you ever heard of that?
No, but I'm deeply interested.
Right, so the easiest way to explain it is it's the opposite of an all or nothing mindset. Right, so an all or nothing mindset is, it's January 1st, right? You've had a lovely Christmas. You've enjoyed yourself, which that's what it's there for. And you're like, okay, I'm not drinking alcohol for January. I'm not going to eat carbohydrates. And I'm going to exercise 5 days a week.
Okay.
Right? Quite common. People would set these strict rules when it comes into January 1st, right?
Yeah.
After 2-3 weeks, you're starting to get quite hungry. Your motivation might be, waning a little bit. You're getting a little bit fed up. Maybe the scales aren't moving. And then it's your birthday, right? So you're going out for your birthday. Let's just say you go to the cinema with a few friends and you're in McDonald's on the way home, right? Because we eat food for more than nutrition. We eat food to socialize to. So you're in McDonald's and you set yourself these strict rules. I can't have carbohydrates. I can't have any alcohol. So you're looking at the menu, you're like, I'm just going to have, I'm going to have the full burger. I'm going to have the chips. I'm going to have the full sugar Coke. Right. So you've gone from all in to all out. So you've failed, right? But that's because you set yourself up for failure. Okay. And the same thing goes for exercise. Like you set yourself to go to the gym 5 days a week, but you can't make 5 days. So then maybe you just give up completely. And then you give up with your nutrition completely. But what I like to talk about is continuum thinking, which is, okay, let's not set these rules in the first place. Okay. And how can I, so when you're in McDonald's, what's the worst possible decision? The least nutritionally beneficial decision I can make, and what's the most nutritional decision I can make. Okay. So maybe it's the most nutritional decision is salad with some extra chicken. Maybe the least nutritional decision is a burger, Coke, chips. Okay. We often think of those two decisions, but we don't think of all the options in between. How can I be a little bit better today? Maybe I could not have the chips, just have the burger and the Coke. Maybe I could have a 0 sugar Coke. So there's always options to try do a little bit better, depending on how your day goes. Like if you've had a really busy day, I don't know, kids are annoying you, there's something stressful's happened at work. Where can I be on that continuum today? Am I going to have the least nutritional decision? And that's fine. That's being mindful about your decisions. You've realized you've had a very stressful day. I'm going to have my burger, my chips, and my Coke. I'm going to enjoy that. I'm not going to feel guilty after that. Tomorrow, where can I be in the continuum? All right. And the same thing for exercise. Don't set yourself strict rules for the gym or for whatever form of exercise you like to do. If you get there once a week, we know there's huge benefits to that. Even if it's as little as 3 minutes of exercise has been shown to be beneficial for our health. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's all the same concept. Don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Right? Anything is better than nothing, and the decent method you follow is better than the perfect one you quit. So that's like, I probably have a 20-minute conversation around that whole topic when clients come into me or patients. And even a lady this morning, I actually told her I was going on the podcast, and she was like, you can say this story. So she's actually a My Best Weight patient. And she's, found, we only started working together 2 weeks ago, and she found huge freedom in letting go of these strict rules and restrictions and using this continuum thinking. And she was saying her son, he's a 7-year-old, and she described him as a volcano, right? So he just like erupts. Like it's either, he's perfectly calm or he's just like really angry and frustrated. And she has a little whiteboard in her kitchen, she was saying, where she writes down her kind of goals that she's working on. And one of them was like, work on continuum thinking. And the son was like, what's that? What's that mean, continuum? And then she obviously not anything to nutrition or exercise, but she described it to him and tried to use it to help him maybe work on his emotions or realize that, like, if something bad happens, that's okay. You move on. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. So that's continuum thinking, and I think that's, if I could tell if I could tell everyone, say in Ireland, to work on something with their nutrition and exercise, I think it would be that.
Josh, you mentioned something there at the very start, and it was the word guilt. And I think that, or I know that, and I'm sure you know that, people feel guilty about the food that they eat a lot, and they beat themselves up about it. And you can't help it because you love the food and it tastes good, and then afterwards you feel crap because you ate it. How do we get rid of this guilt around food, and why is it there in the first instance?
So this is very, very common. And actually, funny enough, it's probably, what did you say at the start about women? You said middle-aged women, and by middle-aged you said 40, was it? Yeah. So I think that's probably the most, the age group when they come to me, or cohort, is middle-aged women who feel this emotion the most around food. Yeah. I think it's because they've grown up where, a lot of them would have, been trying, Weight Watchers, Slimming World, these programs where there is strict rules set, right? And they, of course, you're going to feel guilty after you eat a food when it's labeled as a sin. Like, of course you're going to feel bad. Oh my God, I've had people on the podcast before talking about that. Like, imagine coming up with calling foods sins. Like, I know, yeah. It's and they're awful. Amazing business models because they're always people will fail and they'll just keep coming back. Yeah, and we might talk about that. Yeah, 9 out of 10 people who look to reduce their weight through using diet, will put that weight. Their weight will increase to their original weight or higher. So yeah, of course, they're great business models. I think it's becoming less pervasive in society in general. I think this whole diet culture. But I was thinking today, I was like, you walk into a coffee shop, you ask for if you want a low-fat coffee, you don't say low-fat coffee. You say skinny coffee, skinny cappuccino. Like that's diet culture, saying that low-fat equals skinny, So how do we get rid of that? Often when I'm working with people, obviously you have to assess to see, maybe is this more than kind of disordered eating? Maybe there's an eating disorder there, in which case, I might work with the patient or I might refer them out. They might need some psychological input. But things like, telling yourself, so when you eat a meal, asking yourself, how have I benefited from this meal other than nourishment? Okay, so I got to spend time with my husband. I haven't had a meal with him in a few weeks. I got to spend time with my kids. It made me feel a bit nice. Maybe I'm going through some grief at the moment, and this food made me feel better, or it was tasty. So, like, food is comforting, and like what you said, the act even of preparing food. I love it. I it can be a pain in the arse sometimes because the pack of animals at home, but like that act of preparing food and sitting down with your family is there's something quite wholesome and lovely about it, and enjoying that meal. Yeah. But then the fact that people, they might eat a bit too much, or they might, choose an unhealthy option, and that guilt that they feel afterwards is just, it's terrible how it's become this thing. It is, yeah, absolutely. And like you even mentioned there, like you said unhealthy. So I try to get people not to label foods. Not healthy, not unhealthy, not good, not bad. Okay. Not a treat. food is food, right? If you want to say something, you can say less nutritious and more nutritious. But again, even if you do that, you're missing out on other reasons why we eat. Like, you're just focusing on the nutrition rather than focusing on how you've benefited in general from eating that meal.
There's all this talk now about ultra processed foods. This is a buzzword now.
Okay, right.
So it's not just processed foods, it's like ultra processed foods, and we need to be avoiding them. And like, this is not, but you know, cheese is processed.
Exactly. Yeah, sure.
Milk is processed. Anything that is not raw and coming out, like if you're not sucking the milk from the udder of a cow, you're drinking processed food.
Absolutely, spot on. Yeah.
So this ultra processed food is another way of, even though people are trying to put a health slant on it, it's another way, I suppose, of demonizing food. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure there is huge benefits to labeling foods as ultra processed either, because the definition of kind of between processed and ultra processed, it's very grey. It's not very clear. So you can't really, like, what do you call ultra processed and processed? So I don't think it's very helpful.
Okay.
But back to your point, if people need to know what foods are good and bad, you know, I think people need to know what a balanced, nutritious diet looks like. You know?
Okay.
But as part of that, I think there is places for less nutritious food.
Okay.
Like chocolate, sweets, crisps and biscuits. So I tell people, don't call it shite. Don't call it crap, right? Call it what it is. Chocolate, biscuits, sweets, whatever that is you like to eat. Because again, people come into me, they're feeling guilty, like, Josh, I just ate so much shite last night, you know. But like, you know, what did you actually eat? Okay, I had some biscuits and crisps. Okay, like that's a step in the right direction, I think.
Okay.
Because there's no benefit to feeling guilty, you know, and that guilt then leads to restriction, probably, right? And then these foods are in our life, okay? Maybe our lives would be better if they weren't. I don't know. Thousands of years ago, we didn't have these temptations and stuff, but they're here. They're not going to go away. We're going to eat them. So restricting them doesn't help either. You know, let's normalize these foods, right? They're here to stay. So can you get to a place where you don't see chocolate as like on a pedestal or anything, right? Can you get to a place where chocolate's just normal, and if you had 2 squares that you'd feel comfortable with that and satisfied with that, and then you wouldn't have any guilt and you could move on to the next day.
Okay. So what does this healthy meal look like then? Tell me that.
So a nutritious meal.
Oh yeah,
right?
sorry, I keep using the wrong word.
I bet you I'll get some slack for that now, but I think it's a better way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, because there's a positive mindset about it rather than negative. Okay.
And health, like, how is going for a burger with your friends, how is that an unhealthy thing to do? It's not. You get to socialize and see your friends. So are we saying burgers are healthy or unhealthy? You know, I just don't think it's a...
But I suppose it's when people are sitting on the couch by themselves, they may not be socializing, but they're downing, you know, it's people that are secret eating, eating packets of Doritos by themselves and feeling that awful guilt afterwards. There's a difference with the socializing.
Of course
and that.
Of course, yeah, 100%. So a nutritious meal, what does that look like? So I like to use hands. Right, so have you ever heard of hand portions?
I have.
Okay, great. So I like to use hands with my clients or patients. But again, listen, I always meet the person where they're at and say, you know, what's your previous experiences? What are you trying to achieve? You know, what works for you? That kind of thing. So, but most of the time, end up using hand portions, okay? To plate up your meal. Hand portions to plate your food. Not necessarily when you're cooking it, just when you're plating it up.
Okay.
Okay. So palms are for protein. Right, so... you know, a serving of protein is a palm, and that's thickness too. Okay, so it's not, you know, some people when they're learning and they're starting off might say, I got my palm and I had a slice of ham. But a slice of ham isn't really a palm of protein. It's just, it looks like your palm this way, but not from the side.
That's very true.
Okay.
What if you've really small hands?
But so I like to use hands because they're very handy. Right, they're always honest, right? But they're also individualized to us. So, you know, bigger people tend to have bigger hands.
Okay.
They likely need to eat more than smaller people, smaller hands.
Okay.
So that kind of answers your questions, about the size of the hands.
Unless you're like a ridiculously big person with teeny tiny hands, but you know,
exactly. Yeah,
I'd say they're few and far between.
Obviously, there's
there are outliers.
But okay, so there's, you know, the recommended guidelines, and then there's your hunger levels, your fullness levels, your desires, your likes, your dislikes. So like there's other factors at play, right? But I caveat a lot of things, right? So 1 to 2 pounds of protein at each meal.
Okay, and is that protein being, lean meat, or is that protein meaning cheese, or?
That protein can be lots of different things. Okay. It can be beef, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy. Generally, low-fat dairy is higher in protein, so low-fat yogurt is going to be higher than full-fat yogurt in protein. It can be, kind of, if you're, say, practicing vegetarianism or veganism, it can be high carbohydrate, like carbohydrate sources that are rich in protein, such as beans, chickpeas, and lentils.
Okay.
They're going to be your best friend if you are practicing veganism. It can be, for convenience, some people like to use protein powders. Okay. And they can be very beneficial. So it can be lots of things. But if we're just talking about your conventional plate, if you want to imagine your lunch, let's say you're making up a sandwich. Okay. You want to try to get 1 to 2 pounds worth of chicken in there, for example. Okay. Then we go to carbohydrates. All right. What part of the hand do you think you use for carbohydrates?
I'd say your full hand.
Your cupped hand.
Oh, your cupped hand.
Okay.
Oh, so a lot less than your protein.
So 1 to 2 cupped hands of carbohydrates, about the same. All right. So if you imagine you're making your sandwich, let's say you're at the deli, you obviously would have asked for what type of bread you want first. But so 2 slices of bread. Roughly,
yeah.
Right. For most people. So now you've got your 1 to 2 pounds of protein, your 1 to 2 servings of carbohydrates.
Do you know what, actually, I just thought of there? When you go to Italy, have you ever been to Italy and they give you a portion of pasta and you're like, Jesus, that's tiny compared to what I get at home, because you get a massive plate of pasta here, whereas there you get like a cupped hand, and it's only ever a starter over there as well. Okay. That's a smaller amount.
I
there you
haven't
go.
noticed that, so obviously, listen, our portion sizes are quite big.
Our portion sizes are huge.
It's great though. No. So you got your protein, your carbohydrates, so we're making up our sandwich here. We're missing fats. So there's 3 macronutrients: proteins, fats, carbohydrates. That's what we get our energy from, and that's why they're called macronutrients. There's a 4th macronutrient. Can you guess what it is?
No, I can't.
Alcohol. So we get energy from alcohol. 7 calories per gram of alcohol, just so everyone knows.
But why is that a macronutrient?
Because we get energy from it. So we get energy from protein, or calories as people know them. We get energy from fat, energy from protein, carbs, and energy from alcohol.
Okay.
That's how we get all of our energy. Everything else is just...
But do you mean alcohol in the conventional sense, having a drink, or do you mean alcohol like when foods are...
No,
change into alcohol?
No. Conventional sense.
Okay.
Having a drink, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously alcohol has other sources of energy in there, like carbohydrates. Like your beer isn't just alcohol, it's also carbohydrates.
Okay.
Anyway, so we're missing fats in that sandwich, right? So how can you get some fats? You have different options. You have cheese, right? And we go thumbs for fats. So 1 to 2 thumbs worth of fat in your sandwich, right? So you have some cheese, maybe you have some butter. We can talk about these. Maybe you have some mayonnaise, right? There's different choices you can make.
Okay.
They're your fats.
Right.
And then we're missing veggies. Right? And we know that the more vegetables we eat, the less likely we are to basically die. Okay. As later on in life. Like it prevents lots.
Literally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The evidence is pretty clear. The more vegetables we can eat, the better our health. But like also, genetics are going to be your biggest predictor of your health. But
yeah, okay.
So 1 to 2 fists worth of veggies at each meal. And this is where most people probably struggle.
Right.
Okay. So in your sandwich then, kind of get 1 to 2 fists of veggies in. Maybe
when you say veggies, is that like lettuce or salad or whatever? Okay.
Yeah, lettuce, tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, mushrooms, whatever you want.
Okay.
Eat the veggies you love, really, because that's what you're more likely to eat lots of.
And there's this thing about veggies, and if you should really be eating 45 different types of vegetables a week or something like that to get all the... You've never heard that?
I've heard
of this for your microbiome, to get the real diverse diet.
I've heard that there's kind of something that's thrown around, that 30 different plant-based sources of food.
Oh, right. Well, maybe that's it. I obviously heard it wrong.
Yeah, that's probably it. So, again, there's probably poor evidence. There's definitely very poor evidence behind the 30 different.
Okay.
But there is good evidence, decent evidence that we should all be eating kind of a variety of plant-based sources of food. And that's to help our gut microbiome, which is a very new line of research, but it's very interesting and, it seems to have an effect on our health.
Okay.
So now you've got a complete, balanced, nutritious meal there. You've got some carbohydrates, some proteins, some fats, and some veggies.
Okay.
Using your hands. Very simple, no tracking food, scanning things.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's the tracking and the scanning and all these apps that we have. We can weigh our grams and it can become quite obsessive. And then to the point then that sometimes people feel that they can't go out to eat because they can't weigh their food.
Yeah. So hopefully you'll always have your hands on you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I like to I suppose, teach people.
Okay.
Over time. But if you translate that back to, another form, it looks like the food pyramid, right? So it's not that different to what has been recommended for the past, 20, 30 years.
But has the food pyramid changed a little bit since?
It has changed, actually, yeah. I don't know the exact changes. I only really know the current food pyramid.
Okay, yeah. I think there's less carbohydrates on the bottom.
And it's veggies now on the bottom.
Yeah, and it's kind of increased the fat as well. Like we were very low fat diet mentality back in the 80s. Yeah. And now that's kind of flipped. And actually, I just wonder, are you familiar with the Pure study?
Yes.
And about the whole idea of, is full fat dairy actually better than low fat dairy when it comes to cholesterol? Because I obviously have high cholesterol and I went down a rabbit hole with the whole cholesterol thing.
Very interesting.
And when you look at the Pure study, it would suggest full fat dairy is actually healthier. It doesn't actually reduce your cholesterol levels significantly if you're taking low fat food. Am I right there, or am I totally?
So listen, okay, so supposed to break it down to the listeners, there's something in our blood called LDL, right, known as LDL cholesterol, and that can increase your risk of developing atherosclerosis or buildup of plaque in the arteries, and that can obviously increase your risk of stroke or heart attack later on in life. And diet can affect our LDL cholesterol. Okay, you can expect about 10 to 15% reduction in your LDL through diet and lifestyle changes. So that's a really important point, because if your LDL is above a certain level, you're still going to need medication to reduce that to let's say a normal range. And LDL is really something you don't want to, I suppose, mess around with. Like, it is really important to act with whatever results you get if you want to, I suppose, improve your health. So with nutrition then and LDL, it's about mainly reducing your saturated fat. You're going to get the best bang for your buck from reducing your saturated fat and then replacing it with unsaturated fat. So saturated fat comes from animal-based sources, right, such as fatty meats, processed meats. So fatty meats being beef, lamb, even like the skin of chicken, brown meat and chicken, brown meat on the turkey. It comes from butter and cream.
Jesus, I love butter.
Yeah.
Oh, love it. But anyway.
Yeah. And that's possibly one reason why Ireland have kind of tend to have high cholesterol levels, because we do eat lots of butter. It tastes amazing.
Oh.
Right. So it comes from butter and cream, and any products that might have butter and cream in them, things like pastries or biscuits or chocolate. So these foods tend to be high in saturated fat. So you want to reduce or minimize those, right? About 10% of your total fat intake should be saturated fat or less.
So you see, that's back to measuring, isn't it? And
exactly. Really difficult, really stressful.
Because even I think I read it was like if you get under 20 grams a day as a female, under 30 grams a day as a male. But even I was like, how the hell do you measure it? Like,
it's difficult. So I suppose, you're trying to just minimize like those saturated fat. Don't worry about measuring. I don't think it's worth it. So you say you've had a high cholesterol result. The best kind of sources for our cholesterol seem to be nuts, seeds, and olive oil. Right, so those three things. Also oily fish like salmon, mackerel, herring, trout. Increase those, decrease your saturated fat, and also increase your fiber intake, especially soluble fiber. So fiber from fruit and oats are quite beneficial for cholesterol. But getting on to your point about the Pure study and dairy sources of saturated fat, so things like full fat milk, full fat cheese, and full fat yogurt. There's good evidence showing that they don't have the same impairment on our health compared to saturated fat that comes from butter or cream or those kind of more processed foods I spoke about.
Okay.
So again, I don't know if it's you kind of have to look at your own individual diet and be like, do I eat loads of full fat milk and loads of full fat cheese? Maybe then I could look to reduce it, but it doesn't seem to be much of a worry. You're much better focusing on the things I spoke about earlier there.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, it is, especially in, like, we've amazing cheese here, we've amazing milk and butter.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, butter's not to reduce your butter.
Reduce your butter. But I just think it's important, that milk thing, because a lot of people they'd be drinking low fat milk thinking that they're doing themselves really good, but in actual fact, if they just had their full fat milk but maybe reduced it a little bit, it's as good as, and then they're enjoying that benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe they really enjoy the taste of that milk,
Yeah.
and that's also stuff you have to take into account.
Yeah. Okay. So protein intake daily. I know it's very hard to get an actual figure on it, so I'd be keen to know what you say to people. They say about 1 to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, isn't that right? But like, there's a big difference between 1 gram and 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So like, what I'm 68 kilograms.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between me taking 1 gram per
Big difference, yeah.
per that, or 2 grams. So what should women in particular be looking for?
So there's actually no, the recommendations in Ireland, there's no difference between men and women for protein. Right? That's the recommendations in Ireland that are, I think they're from 1999. Right? So they're older. Cool. Takes a long time to change these things. But 0.8 grams per kilo of body weight is what the recommendation is.
That's very little, isn't it?
It is very little, yeah. It's quite achievable for most people.
Okay.
Now, for people over the age of 65, it's 1 to 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight. So it increases. Right? And there's a really good reason for that. As we get older, we need more protein, not less. Because let's say I ate a chicken breast and let's say my granny ate a chicken breast, right? We'd get completely different responses in our what's called muscle protein synthesis. Right, so that's basically the buildup of muscle. When you eat, you get a spike in that synthesis. It might last a few hours. Me and my granny would have completely different responses.
So when you eat protein, you get muscle synthesis.
Muscle protein synthesis, yeah. And then it goes, after about 3 hours, it'll start to come down again, right? And then you'll go into muscle protein breakdown. And then you'll eat another meal and it'll go back up and down and up. And you're hoping that kind of the average of your spikes beats the average of your troughs.
Okay.
And then you should be building muscle. But anyway.
Is that why you should eat protein post a workout?
Yeah. So, well, the evidence eating protein straight after your workout is actually quite poor. That like 30-minute window you might have heard about, 30-minute anabolic window, train and get your shake in straight away. That was made up by supplement companies. That's a myth.
Oh my God.
So you don't need to do that, right?
Okay.
But eating protein around your workout, maybe it's an hour before, maybe it's an hour after, that's beneficial. But also because we should really be eating protein every 3 to 4 hours, right? To help us build muscle and gain strength.
That makes it really easy then. Because, I have teenage boys, so they would be they would have been listening to that supplement company telling them bullshit.
Yeah, so they don't need to be down.
There's no need.
Shakes.
So it's in and around. So either before or after workout, it has the same effects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every 3 to 4 hours, get your protein in. Obviously, if you haven't eaten like 3 hours before your training session, like then you probably should be getting something in after your training session, not necessarily because it's right after your training session, but because you haven't eaten protein in 3 to 4 hours. But with elderly or people over the age of 65, they go through a thing called anabolic resistance, right? Where basically they get a much more blunted response to eating protein. So that's why we need to eat more protein as we get older. But that's really tough because obviously you're battling against reduced appetite.
Yeah.
But protein intake is important because it helps us keep our muscles strong and healthy and functioning. And like that is so important for later on in life, because it allows you to still walk the dog, play with your grandkids,
wipe your bum.
Exactly.
Tie your shoelaces, do all of those things.
Maintain your independence.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it reduces your risk of falls, right? But also, if you fall and you have a bit more muscle mass, you're less likely to have a fracture. And, there is some evidence showing that. So over the age of 65, we'll lose about 10% of our muscle every 10 years. Okay. But if you're hospitalized and you're kind of bedbound for a period of 3 days, you can lose 10% of muscle in that 3 days.
Jesus, and it's so hard to build it back up again, yeah?
So that's why you see, like maybe some of the listeners like have, parents who had a fall and then like you kind of get that stepwise decline in
It is,
in
it's
function.
very sad.
Yeah. But you're asking about women. There's no difference between men and women for protein recommendations. And sorry, I said 0.8 grams per kilo But that's, again, as I said, quite old guidelines in Ireland. And if you look at the broader, the large body of evidence now and read all the expert consensus of people in this kind of area of research, it's that we should be eating to kind of build muscle and gain strength, which a lot of us are trying to do, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight.
Okay.
So that's a lot more.
It is.
It's double the recommended in Ireland. Now, for a lot of people, that might not be achievable. And you have to meet yourself where you're at. Like currently, let's say you're having 2 palms per day of protein.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not try to get you up to 8. Like, can you add 1 palm in? Can you consistently do that over time? Great. Then can you add a 4th in? Then can you add a 5th in? So everyone's different, and you have to meet yourself where you're at. Like, that's really important.
Okay. And do you drink protein shakes to get the protein into you?
Sometimes.
Because you're quite well built. It looks like you would, be eating protein.
Yeah, I try to eat like 2 pounds of protein 4 times a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that would be roughly what most people should be trying to achieve.
I think you should see where you're at now. With nutrition,
you see, tried to catch you out there.
nutrition is all about reflection and assessing where you're at. Like, so trial and error, see where you're at, be aware of that. Can I increase it? Do I want to increase it? What are the trade-offs of that? What are the benefits? So I'm not just going to say 6 to 8 pounds for everyone, because it just depends.
Okay. Jesus. That's really breaking it down much more simply, though, than I thought. Good. And like that, I think we've just overcomplicated it to the point that people don't know what to do, and then they end up just going, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to throw the towel in here because I just, I don't have a clue. Mm-hmm. Isn't it?
No, sorry, absolutely. Yeah.
And then you've all these diets coming at us. Yeah, so, when I was in college, it was the Atkins diet. Everyone was mad on that. Your man died of a heart attack. He was eating so much fat, saturated fat probably as well.
That actually brings us on to the whole, there's a huge social media push, I don't know if you've seen it, around like the carnivore diet.
Yes. Let's discuss.
There's very few things I tell people not to do, right? Just broadly blanket statement, but don't follow a carnivore diet.
Okay. And why would that be?
Because it's very high in saturated fat, and the evidence is so clear now that an increase in saturated fat in your diet is linked to an increase in LDL, which is linked to an increase in buildup of plaque in our arteries, which can cause heart attack and stroke later.
Okay.
So I do think that there's going to be a lot of consequences of people following this carnivore diet, but not in the next 10 years, in the next 30, 40 years.
So more veggies, people, isn't that right? So let's talk about menopause, weight gain, and what nutrition strategies can help women that feel that. Because I'll tell you what happens. Us, right? Yeah, Josh, you're only a young lad now. So I'm sure you know, like women, as we go through perimenopause and menopause, with the reduction in hormones, the fat distributes itself differently on our bodies. So we get more middle age spread, we get more muscle wasting. So it's like the bottom goes a bit flatter, the belly gets a bit bigger. And women that may have been slim build all their lives, exercised and eaten really well, or even women that weren't, but they find that they just have this middle age spread that literally feels like they come on overnight, and they can't get rid of it, and they beat themselves up by not being able to get rid of it, and they try calorie deficits and they try exercise, and then they just throw everything they can at it, and they find it impossible to shift. Go on, just solve that for us now, right? And you'll be the most savior. You'll be the most famous man in Ireland.
Yeah, so listen, menopause is a very difficult time for people. Like, obviously, I don't know from personal experience, but and you obviously have that hormonal shift, which you talk about, which can change the distribution of fat in our bodies, and that might not necessarily have a negative health impact. It might not, right? But society and culture again tells us that that's not a good thing, where it is a very natural thing to happen. Like that is normal aging, right? Mm-hmm. So I suppose it's a real pity that society and culture makes us feel that way, or makes women going through menopause feel like that. But it's also just menopause happens to happen at a time that's quite where women might be at the peak of their career, where their job is most stressful. It may be affecting their sleep, negatively affecting their sleep. Their kids might be stressing them out loads. Their husband might be annoying them, right? So you've got loads.
You know a lot about menopause, Josh. You're there pretending you don't.
So you've got a lot of
Sounds
things.
like my life.
You've got a lot of things going on. And all of these things can also just not change the body fat distribution, but increase weight gain or cause weight gain. Whether it's the hormonal shift causing the weight gain or whether it's all of these other things, who knows, right? But it's also a common period of life when also men's weight increases too. Mm-hmm. So it's just a busy time in life. I suppose, listen, I can't tell people what to do, right? But the approach that I take with my clients and patients is that health gain approach, right? We're designed to store fat efficiently as human beings, right? That has helped us survive, and that's why we're here today, okay? Because our ancestors were able to survive long periods of time without food because we can store fat. And that worked really well many years ago, but it doesn't work that well today because the environment has completely changed, right? So there's food all around us. It's never tasted so good. It's marketed to us. We don't have to work hard to get it. It's easy to eat, right? So I don't think a calorie restrictive diet that puts lots of rules on you is a good place to start for people going through menopause, right? Mm-hmm. I would rather take that health gain approach, right? How can we use your nutrition to maximize your health? Okay, we know your bone density is going to be at risk now, right? How can we get more sources of calcium in? How can we increase your protein to increase your muscle mass and strength and prevent that muscle loss that you spoke of? But also we know that if you have more muscle, you're more likely to have stronger bones. How can we maximize your performance? How can we increase the things your body can do in the gym or running or whatever it is, yoga? How can we eat more vegetables to reduce our risk of developing diseases later in life, to improve our digestive systems, right? How can we maybe change up your meal times and your approaches to meals to help you maybe sleep better? So it's that health gain, more performance approach rather than weight loss, calorie restriction approach. And I know that's really frustrating to hear maybe, but that's the approach I take with people because we're not designed to be in a calorie deficit.
Mm-mm. And it's impossible to maintain as well.
Yeah, and it's not that it's impossible because of your willpower or your mindset. It's that it's impossible because we're not designed to do it. Our weight is controlled by a part of our brain called the hypothalamus. It's not to do with our willpower.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what I say to women is that we need to be a little bit kinder to ourselves, accept our body will change as we go through perimenopause and menopause. We're not going to look like we did when we were 21, but why the hell would we want to anyway? And I know there are women that they're looking at other women. I'm going to top you up with a little glass of water here, Josh. I'm multitasking here. There are women that they feel really bad about themselves because they can't lose that weight. Yeah. But it's actually, I think, quite impossible to lose that weight when you have all that hormonal shift going on. You're talking about busy lifestyle as well. So I think that it's more like we need to almost accept it. And if we're living as healthy a life as we can while enjoying the indulgences, I love an Indian curry. I'm going to have one tonight with a big bottle of red wine.
Lovely.
And I'm not going to feel guilty tomorrow for having it.
Great.
So I really do think women need to, it's a mindset. It's about accepting our bodies, accepting ourselves where we're at.
Yeah. And I suppose celebrating, what your body can do for you. That's something I work with people too. Our bodies are amazing and they can do great things. And it's focusing on that. But again, it's much easier said than done,
Yeah, it is. So you're working in My Best Weight clinic. That's a clinic that helps people with obesity. Mm-hmm. So we had Mick Crotty on a couple of years ago, and now that you're working with him, how do you help people living with obesity, living with bigger bodies? Mm-hmm. How do you help them with their diet?
Yeah, so I run a program there called My Best Weight Health. Right?
Okay.
So again, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's very much a health gain approach because people with obesity often put a huge focus on weight, which is of course completely fine for them to do that, and we everything we've said in this podcast so far tells us why they do that. You know, diet culture, looking a certain way. Of course, they're going to focus on their weight, but research tells us that we should focus on other metrics. Things like, how easy is it now to walk up and down the stairs? Are you less breathless during the day? Has your sleep apnea improved? Has your sleep in general improved? Has your blood pressure reduced? Cholesterol levels? There's so many other things we can focus on other than weight, right? Weight's a part of the picture, but just not the only part. So that's really why we developed My Best Weight Health. So I use kind of 4 pillars: nutrition, sleep, stress, and movement or exercise to help people living with obesity improve their health, whether they're taking medication for their obesity or whether they're going through surgery or going to start surgery. So that's basically what I do there. And what exactly that looks like completely depends on the person.
And do you draw up diet plans for people?
I've never actually. Oh, what do you mean by plan?
So do you give people a prescriptive weekly meal plan?
No.
Okay.
Because people have, when you look up the definition of a diet, okay, it's what people or communities habitually eat on a daily basis, right? So we all have our own diet. You have your diet, I have my diet. And we've developed these diets because, we have our own dislikes, our likes, our cultural preferences, our family preferences. So there's loads of different reasons why we eat the way we do. So why would you go completely changing that and giving like some kind of cookie cutter meal plan? Right? I'd much rather meet the person where they're at, ask them their diet history and what they eat on a daily basis, and be like, okay, how can we improve that a little bit? How can we change that? Can we do this? Can we do that? So now you're not walking away with like a completely different plan. It's just, here's little improvements or changes I can make.
That's interesting too then, because I suppose with diets and with weight loss, we want to see results quickly. But what you're suggesting to me would be that actually the results don't happen quickly. They happen over a longer period of time with the tools that you're saying that you implement. Yeah.
Whatever the results or outcome is that people are looking for, it would absolutely happen over a slower period of time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then is it a case that if people come to see you in whatever clinic they're seeing you in, do they go for weekly check-ins, or it almost sounds as if you do a bit of a counselling service?
Yeah, like a box of tissues in my room.
But do you know what I mean? It does sound like it's almost like you're actually trying to get to the root cause of their relationship with food, and then change their mindset around it rather than. I actually assumed that you gave them meal plans.
Okay, yeah. I try to just never tell people what to do, and more educate them and then let them make the decision. Because research shows that if the client or patient comes up with their plan, they're more likely to stick with that. Because everyone has their own barriers, so you have to try maneuver around those barriers. I don't know those until I meet you and talk to you.
And what about the time barrier to prepare wholesome food or more nutritionally beneficial food? See, I'm a quick learner. What about that? Because people are rushing to work and they're rushing home and they're picking kids up from crash and they're trying to put nutritionally beneficial meals on the table. But if they're arriving at 7 o'clock after working all day and they're very, very tired, it is difficult to start a meal from scratch.
It's so hard. So hard. I'd say like a lot of people will we work on kind of the weekends, right, where they might have a little bit more time, and could they possibly do some kind of preparation for the week, like something that's going to help them, and not like you don't need to meal prep for your 3 or 4 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but maybe you could just do Monday, and that would really, you're buying yourself a green light there. You're making Monday a little bit easier. Listen, time is a big factor, and like I'm a big fan of using convenience, right? So do you need to go to the shop to do your shopping for 30 minutes or an hour? Could you possibly order that online? Right? So we're using these great things in the modern world that help us. I'm trying to use convenience to help people. rather than be afraid of convenience.
Yeah.
Or feel bad or guilty about it.
Yeah. The online shopping is a good thing. I never used to do that, and it does free up a lot of time in your week.
Yeah.
And actually, because you can just go into it and it already has your order history, and we tend to, as you said, eat the same stuff all the time.
Yeah.
You can just click on the stuff that you normally get.
Yeah.
I do find that a help in my life anyway.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that helps people is like creating a kind of a roster of go-to meals. You know, like can you try thinking? This takes some time and effort at the start, but then it becomes easier. Like can you think of like, I don't know, 10 different meals that your family love, and that you have them written down, you have the recipes, and you know exactly what you need in the shop for those things, and then you just cycle through them. You know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday we're doing these 3 meals, and then the next week we're doing the next 3. And then you go back, you know, so it's a roster that you just cycle through. You know, and you also don't need to feel worried or guilty about eating the same foods all the time. Like, you know, again, we live in a tough environment when it comes to nutrition. So go easy on yourself. Like,
yeah, it is. It isn't easy, and particularly for families who are trying to do their best by everyone.
And again, sorry, on that time point, like I suppose also, you know, anything's better than nothing. So like you're trying not to aim for perfection. You know, what's one tiny thing you can do today to kind of maybe manage your time better, or to give you more time in the evening, or to improve your family meal at dinner time?
Teaching your kids to cook as well can be very beneficial, can't it?
Yeah. Good evidence behind kind of just involving your children in the cooking process. Yeah.
Children and weight gain and body change. So we know in Ireland that we have an obesity issue when it comes to our children.
Yeah.
And, you know, are there ways that we can, as a family group, help ourselves? Now, look, this is said with the knowledge that people from lower socioeconomic groups that have much less food choices than people with higher socioeconomic groups would have, there's more children that have obesity in those categories, because just by virtue of the fact of food poverty, the cost of food, the cost of living. So I'm saying this with that understanding as well. But also there are parents out there, and I get asked regularly, you know, my daughter's overweight. How do I approach it with her? What can we do as a family to help her, etc. So it's a broad topic, I know, but I think it's one that's worthy of a little bit of discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I loved your caveat there at the start, because it largely depends on your environment. And we have to be aware of that. But yeah, I suppose first it's important to discuss that, you know, children's weight and body shape will change as they grow up, you know, and that's normal for it to change. And it may, you know, if they are a certain you know, if their growth is at a certain stage when they're 10, it might be completely different when they're 18. And again, we have to remind ourselves of the environment that we're living in, and that there's what I've talked about: food everywhere, it tastes great. Like, a big issue is the amount of exposure that children are getting to, you know, less nutritious food, like, and ads for those foods, like ads for McDonald's, and like that really influences a children's choice, right, and what they want to eat. And so that is a big issue. So you have to remind yourself what kind of environment we're living in, and that children are likely to increase in weight as time goes on. So this won't go away. Okay, so I suppose what I'm trying to say is that it's going to become more normal. All right, and if you feel that your child's growth is possibly impairing their health, that's when you need to seek professional advice, and maybe it's a conversation with your GP, and then maybe, you know, trying to keep it away from the conversation of weight with the child. Like, it's more about health, you know, and you know, always framing it from a health point of view, right? I'm worried about your health, maybe, rather than I'm worried about your weight, and being very careful with how you talk about your own body and your dissatisfaction with your body, because that will have a huge influence.
Oh, I know.
On your child.
Or how you talk about food.
Yeah, and the
good and bad.
Yeah, so I'd often talk to patients and clients and say, yeah, it's for you. The good and bad, not labeling foods as good and bad, is for you, but it's also for your child, because they will pick up on these things. So I've kind of, I've meandered away a bit there. But you're asking, what can families do? Family mealtimes. So like that frequently comes up in the evidence is children who sit down for family meal times are more likely to meet their nutritional requirements.
I get mine in a headlock and make them eat their peas and carrots. That's why. You are not leaving this table to eat your peas and carrots.
Right.
I hate peas and eat them.
So you're also trying to not use
Headlocks.
not use food as a reward either.
Okay.
Right. If you can, if
Listen, Josh, I'm sorry now, right?
Yeah.
When I had my first baby, I was like, I am never going to bribe my child.
Exactly.
And then 3 children later, you're like, if you're a good boy, I will give you a little treat. But yeah.
100%. Sorry, I'm going to say I don't have kids. I've no idea how to parent. Right? And I bet you there'll be people listening to this podcast being, will you ever fucking shut up? But if you can, so family meal times, not using food as a reward, right? So not, if you clean up the playroom, you can have a few biscuits, right? Because that's throwing off the child. They're thinking, oh, biscuits, why are they so special, right? And they're going to want those more. And then you might be calling those bad. And then the child's like, hang on, I get them if I'm good. And then you're calling them bad. And then, so it can really influence the child's relationship with food.
And some people have fussy eaters.
Yeah.
Kids that will literally only eat white or that don't like their vegetables touching the other parts of their food. Like, is that just the key? You just go with that and try and not make a big deal about it with them?
Again, if you think that it could be maybe impairing their health, it could be worth to going to a specialist, like a pediatric dietitian, which I'm not. It's not my specialty, because they could have. There's different eating disorders that can cause you to only eat like one type of food, right? But if you think it's just general like picky eating, there's some evidence showing that you need to try multiple times. So some research showing 17 times. It can take 17 times to repeatedly try for your child to like carrots, let's say.
Okay. So
don't give up on the third go kind of thing. And, again, experts in this area would say don't be, cooking 5 different things for everyone. But this is your dinner. You can eat it if you want.
Yeah.
But I'm sure chaos will happen then and the house will be a disaster. So
what I did for years, like right up until I just blended the veggies into the food. Like I blend it into the sauce, so the chicken curry and the bolognese. So I knew that there was like a couple of meals every week that they got loads of vegetables in. And then the rest of the time I didn't really fuss too much because I think that you can overly complicate things.
Definitely.
Making, and now and then they turn around to you and tell you they don't like food, and I'm like, well, I've been putting that veggie in your meals forever, boyo. So you just need to get used to it. So yeah, no, I get it, but it can be tough for parents. They could be worried about kids, and
so tough. I think you have to trust as well that your child, and this is really hard to do, trust that they will get the nutrition in that they need.
Yeah. So we went with a healthy lunch. I want you to give me a healthy breakfast with your Pams, and I want you to give me a healthy dinner with your Pams. And then
did we do a healthy lunch?
We did a healthy lunch.
We did a more nutritious lunch.
Fuck, we did a more nutritious lunch. I want a more nutritious breakfast, a more nutritious dinner. And we didn't discuss the alcohol part and how much, because we talked about portion size. So how much alcohol should that?
Right. Yeah. So breakfast, like there's loads of different options. Okay, let's look in the protein category first. If your different proteins for breakfast, most commonly will be yogurt and eggs, right? Low fat Greek yogurt is the highest protein content of all yogurts. Right?
Okay,
so low, and something small people might find interesting is Greek style yogurt is much less protein than actual Greek yogurt. So if you can try in Lidl or Aldi or Dunn's, go for their low-fat Greek yogurt. That's going to be your biggest bang for buck in terms of protein.
Oh, it's so tasty. I eat the full-fat one.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's really tasty.
With berries and with honey. Yeah. It's literally like heat and cream.
Yeah.
But it's if you're moderate with the portion size, and it's everything really in moderation, isn't it? And having that kind of abundance thinking when it comes to food rather than the restrictive.
And sorry, I'm saying... I'm not saying low fat in any way to do a calorie restriction. I'm just thinking, can you get your protein intake in, right?
So the lower the fat content, the higher the protein content in general. Okay.
In general, yeah.
Okay.
So let's say you're having your yogurt, whether it's 0%, 5%, 10% Greek yogurt, whatever you want. Let's just call that your protein intake. Okay. Now, what are we missing? Some carbohydrates. How can you get some carbohydrates in? Go back to our cupped hands. Could you have 2 cupped hands of berries on top. Could you have 1 cup tan of granola or muesli or something, and then the other cup tan berries?
Is granola not very sweet and less nutritionally beneficial?
Granola is sweet. It tastes great, right? I love it with my yogurt in the morning because of the taste. It tastes amazing, right? It's giving me fiber. There's fiber in granola, right? There's nuts and seeds. So you're getting some unsaturated fats, right, which we know are possibly beneficial for our cholesterol. Think of things on a continuum, right? Carbohydrate choices for breakfast. Where's granola, right? It's probably in the middle, right? So if we're thinking about a continuum, granola's in the middle. I'm fine being in the middle. Like, if you can just get comfortable in the grey, you don't have to be perfect, right? A more nutritious carbohydrate option for breakfast with your yogurt. Maybe you could just have oats. You know?
Bit boring though, isn't it, Josh?
Exactly. So like, where are you gonna be? Maybe you could have fruit. Like, fruit is definitely the most nutritious option there. But to be honest with you, I want a cup tan of fruit and I want a cup tan of granola because it tastes great.
But no Frosties.
That's important to me. What?
No Frosties.
For you?
Well, for anyone, Frosties or cornflakes or all of those things.
I mean, those cereals are, like, they're usually quite high in sugar and low in fiber, right? But some cereals are very nutritious. So again, let's have a look at the cereal continuum. You know, you've maybe got your Cocoa Pops down one end, least nutritious, right? And then your most nutritious could be, I don't know, muesli, shredded wheat, all bran, fruit and fiber. Okay, so you've got your continuum. Where do you want to be today?
You're a very positive person.
Do you want to have your Cocoa Pops today because you love them and they bring you back to childhood?
Yeah.
That's fine. Right?
Do you know what cereal brings me back to childhood? I don't even know if it exists anymore. Start. Do you know Start? There are these like little shamrock shaped, really sweet, and we'd only get them when we visited my parents' friends up the north. They used to have Start. We used to be, oh my God, and they make the milk really sugary. Anyway, I digress. Sorry, I just that just brought back. And do you know what? That just shows you the relationship that we have with food. That memory of Start reminded me of all the fun that I had when we went up the north on those trips in the Volkswagen Derby. All of 6 was squeezed in and having the crack up the north. My mum and dad had a few drinks and we hung around with their kids. So we have this really deep relationship with food, don't we?
Absolutely.
Which is why when we, feel guilty about eating it and hate ourselves because we enjoy it, it's just it's terrible because we eat to live and live to eat. It's kind of like they're kind of mixed in the middle, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so complex.
Yeah. Sorry, I went on talking about myself there. Can you still buy
your Start? No,
I don't. I don't because do you know what? I don't. I tend to not buy those things in the house because if I did, I'd go home and sure they'd eat it in one go. Like they just what I do is I tend to not bring the stuff into the house if I don't want them to eat it.
Yeah. So you as a parent, you have control over the environment at home.
Yeah.
And other than that, you don't have that much control over your child's nutrition.
Yeah. Now I have like cornflakes there and that, and I know they're not the most nutritious cereal, but they're there when they want. They can have them. Sometimes they have them for their dinner because I'm not bothered cooking. So yeah. Yeah,
absolutely fine. So we were talking about yogurt. So we have your yogurt, that's your protein. We have your granola and fruit, that's your carbohydrate. All right, so we're missing a little bit of fat there. Could we get a bit more extra unsaturated fat in? So unsaturated fat comes from plant-based sources such as nuts and seeds. So go to your thumbs. Maybe I already have a thumb of fat in there with my granola. Maybe I'll just add one more thumb of fat in and add some flax seeds or chia seeds there fairly in at the moment, right?
So a thumb of nuts is actually about like 6 pecans. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you could literally like eat nuts all day long. It's so tasty, but you don't need that much of it if it's a thumb.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. But again, things like, just digressing a bit, things like nuts, like, or like they sometimes get the blame, when we live. Or like fruit. I often get asked about fruit. Like I'd say, twice a week now I get asked, Josh, what's the story with fruit? Like, it's just, can I eat it? People say it's bad. But like, how can you be blaming fruit and nuts, for our health when we have an environment that's, full of much less nutritious, let's call it ultra processed food that's easy to access, cheap and so on, Anyway, that's a completely separate point.
Well, I suppose it's the fruit thing because it used to be 5 portions of fruit or vegetables a day, but now we know it's 7 and most of them should be vegetables. But you're like looking at me going, but Laura, Now you're telling people that they should be eating 7 portions of vegetables or fruit a day, and that's not what we do around here. So, but we used to have fruit and vegetables on an equal par, but we know that vegetables are more nutritious than fruit when it comes to sugar versus non-sugar.
I don't think vegetables are more nutritious than fruit.
Really? Okay.
Fruit's full of fiber, it's full of water, it's full of vitamins and minerals. Right? It's incredibly nutritious. It tastes great. There is sugar in fruit. So it's a carbohydrate source, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we need carbohydrates. We need carbohydrates to exercise. When anyone who's listening now, when you're in the gym exercising, you're using carbohydrates as fuel. So we need carbohydrates to fuel that. Also, your brain uses roughly 20% of the total energy that you take in per day to fuel itself. So a tiny organ uses 20% of all your calories in the day, right? It can only use carbohydrate. So your brain needs carbohydrate, which you need to concentrate and perform at work or whatever it is. And your body needs carbohydrate, your muscles, etc., to train hard, right? So we need carbohydrates. Fruit's very filling. It's very hard to eat lots and lots of fruit, right? If you imagine 500 calories of fruit, right, which might look like, I don't know, this for anyone watching, right? A big, massive basket of fruit.
Okay.
Or 500 calories of something like chocolate or peanut butter, right? Very dense. You could probably fit it in your hand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is fruit really an issue?
No.
I do not think so. No. It's full of fiber, and the fiber helps slow down the digestion of glucose. So it tends to kind of not have a negative effect on our blood glucose.
Okay.
So your breakfast, you've now got protein, carbohydrates, and fats.
But no alcohol.
Pretty nutritious meal, right?
Very nutritious meal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you're having eggs before you get the alcohol, you might have your 2 pounds of eggs, right? That might be like 3 to 4 eggs. Okay. You've already got your fat there because there's fat in the egg yolk. You need some carbohydrates, bit of toast. If you want it to be brown, that's probably more nutritious on the continuum. Have brown toast. So you've got your protein, your fats, your carbs. Missing some veggies, because you're not having fruit there. Could you get some veggies in? Maybe some spinach or something.
Easy.
Simple. And if you, depending on your lifestyle, it's easy, yeah.
Okay. Now dinner. Let's go.
Dinner's one I focus on less with people because most people who come to me have families and it's just like, it changes so often. So again, I just tell them to look at your hands, look at your plate when you have it on the plate and be like, do I have a bit of everything here?
Okay.
If I don't have, or like, let's say you have everything, can you then improve some things? Like maybe you are having white rice. Could you maybe switch it to brown rice? Not that brown rice is really that much more nutritious. So I just couldn't think of an example there.
Is it not?
Only not really.
Fiber
provides
wise,
you different. Fiber is actually quite similar between brown.
Oh, is it? I would have assumed
slightly more in brown.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so again,
brown rice would actually maybe even give me stomach cramps or something.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I like the
So this is what it's so individual, isn't it? Or maybe I'm trying to think of dinner examples. Oh yeah, like so let's say you use butter on your potatoes and that's your saturated fat source. Like maybe then you could switch that for maybe a bit of olive oil on your vegetables and switch the butter to flora or something.
Or a bit of cheese.
Or a bit of cheese.
So you would recommend that if people are if they like that kind of buttery taste, that they switch to the likes of Flora or Lolo or something like that, would you?
So if the person doesn't have high cholesterol and their bloods are perfectly normal, then have a bit of butter. Like it's probably if is that your only kind of source of fat on the plate? So it's not as big of a deal for someone who's doesn't have an issue with their LDL cholesterol. Okay. But like, of course, you could improve most of the time by switching that for like olive oil or maybe, as I said, I would recommend people if they have high LDL to switch to something like Flora or. Okay. I think I know the answer to this, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. Calorie counting. Do you recommend that? No. I didn't think so. But I try not to recommend anything to anyone. I can tell. I'd say people go to you and they're like, and then after the consult, they're like, he didn't tell me nothing. I'm only messing. I'm only messing. No, it's more like,
I find the calorie
here's
counting.
the benefits of calorie counting. Here's the pros of calorie counting. What do you think? And most of the time, people are like, yeah,
it's terrible because I did a little ebook that people can download on the website for free, and I deliberately didn't put calories in it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I just think when people come fixated with calories, it's like then they're like that's demonizing the food as well. And I think if you could just enjoy your food and eat it, like I had another lady in and she was talking about intuitive eating.
Oh, I listened to that.
Yeah,
it's really good.
So just about eating until you're full and enjoying what you have, rather than like, oh, this is like 500 calories, therefore I only have another, I don't know, how many calories are we supposed to eat nowadays? It depends on everyone, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's that restrictive mindset as well, isn't it?
It is. It's just another way of framing a restrictive diet, you know. It is a bit more flexible in the sense that you can fit different things in to just hit your total calorie content or target. But yeah, I couldn't tell you the last time I told someone to track their calories. So there's something else I was going to say about calories there. Oh yeah, it doesn't really promote diet quality. You just kind of focus on that total number and you think, right, if I can so you might have 300 calories left in the day. And you're like, perfect, I can have something that's less nutritious, like a dairy milk, right? Or chocolate, anyway, whatever your favorite chocolate bar is. Or, so, this is a great chance for me to get a bit of extra protein in and have some unsaturated fat, which is beneficial for my cholesterol, and some fiber. So I'll have a bit of yogurt, nuts and fruit, for 300 calories. So it doesn't really promote diet quality.
And then we did speak about, Weight Watchers and Slimming World and all of those, and the negative impact I suppose they've had on a lot of people's lives. Mm-hmm. But are there a lot of people that still, they find it very difficult to get out of that mindset?
Yeah.
And how do we help them to switch that mindset? Is it that continuum philosophy?
I think the continuum is a great place to start. Yeah.
And to stop seeing food as sins.
Oh yeah,
points.
No. Stop labeling your food. It is what it is. It's a potato.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I love an house spud. I'm a real Irish woman. Oh, I love an house spud.
Great source of fibre, by the way.
Oh yeah, I love them.
And so nutritious.
Yeah.
So yeah, like just label your food. Stop labeling your food. It is what it is. I'd always get people who are, have quite disordered eating. They might, feel guilty frequently after food. They may, try eat in secret. I'd often, you have to, usually it's getting that person away from any kind of tracking or restriction, or, let's just work on the mindset side of things. Let's not even worry about your what you're actually eating, if that makes sense.
I can imagine someone who has been used to tracking food or beating themselves up with the food they eat. I'd say trying to get them away from that tracking, I'd say that instills anxiety and panic in them as well, because they feel maybe they're not as in control.
Yeah.
So how do you help them? I'm fascinated by it, but I'd say it takes you're trying to almost erase years of programming, isn't it?
Yeah, and to be honest with you, probably depending on how much it has influenced, or how many experiences this person has had with diet culture and these restrictive diets, like Weight Watchers or Slimming World. Like they could, patients and clients would come to me and they might have tried it 20 or 30 times. They spent their whole life trying to diet. So in that case, it's probably never going to go away. But it's just learning how to live with it, and understanding why it's happened. It's not your fault, or it's society and culture. But yeah, it can be really, and like they'll almost that they'll have moments where they will let those thoughts come back, and I suppose just being okay with that, and then pushing them away again, or compartmentalizing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
food quality. Focus on how is this food benefiting my body. I'm eating these carbohydrates to fuel myself. I talked about why that's important. I'm eating my protein for my muscle, for my strength. I'm eating my fats for my blood vessels, for my heart. So trying to view food through that
lens.
Yeah.
And it's reiterating that positive mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, and that can take, as I said, like that, it likely won't go away completely for a lot of these people.
Yeah, goodness me. And if you had a magic wand, right, and you could wave it over Ireland today, what would you change about our food culture or about the way food is presented or our thoughts around food? What would be the first thing you do?
Well, that's a seriously tough question.
Is that too tough?
What would I do? You'd have to change. I think I would change the what's considered this obesogenic environment.
Okay.
So, an environment that's, because I am passionate about, working with people living with obesity, and I'm like I try to be an advocate for people living with obesity, and that, trying to, I suppose, educate people about it.
Yeah.
I think I'd have to just choose that. So, like, obesogenic environment is, the stuff I talked about, like the advertising of food.
Yes.
The fact that, you go to, as you said, lower socioeconomic areas, and there's things called food deserts.
Yeah.
So, people living there don't have access to nutritious food. Like, that should change.
Mm-hmm.
You said Ireland, so I think specifically in Ireland, that's what I'd try to change. I think that would have a huge, like, we're living in South County Dublin. We're all the worried well.
Yeah.
Or, sorry, to some extent.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah.
So I think I'd change other areas.
Yeah. No, I think that would be, it would be great. But I just, goodness, it just seems to be going one way, doesn't it? In terms of the access to food, in terms of the advertising of food, what's available to people. And I always bring it back to a punnet of strawberries is like €5 and you can get so much more less nutritionally beneficial food for less money than that. So if you're struggling with your income or you don't have money to spend, what are you going to pick?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course you have to take the responsibility off the individual. A decent analogy we have is the smoking ban and the advertising around smoking. That really reduced Ireland's levels of smoking. And that took the responsibility off the individual, because you couldn't smoke inside anymore. You had to go outside. That was a huge barrier. That created friction between them and smoking. A pack of cigarettes, I think now is €20 or something. To see in the budget. Like, that's mad. Like, so these things like sugar taxes and so on, like they really do take the responsibility off the individual.
I think the advertising standards though have to be looked at considerably.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's actually in Ireland, but I think in the UK they've started introducing that kind of only past 8 o'clock there's advertisements for food on TV now.
Okay.
So children don't see these advertisements.
Children aren't fucking watching TV anymore now. They're watching YouTube and TikTok.
Not say the government know this, but these food corporations, they know that.
Yeah. So they're just advertising it through there stealthily as well, I'd say.
Yeah.
It's a really tough thing. It's like the health service. How do you tackle it? Yeah, it seems to be crazy, and then it's all interlinked, as you say. So it's just so difficult for people. Yeah,
but like, I was thinking about this the other day. I think it was from Albert's, maybe something you asked Albert yesterday. I don't know. I was thinking, like, we're almost sending people to Mars. Like, we need to figure this out. But anyway.
No, but this is very true. But there's just. Is it the stakeholders that are involved? There's just too much money to be made. I was speaking with someone recently who said, I was speaking to Kyla, she was over at the house today, and she was saying that they went, she's doing a comedy tour around Ireland with a couple of Americans, and they call into the gas stations here, and there is fruit and there are healthy-ish choices in. Oh my goodness, more nutritionally beneficial choices in the gas stations here. And the American said you would never see fruit in a gas station over in the States. Everything is packaged, everything is, you'd never see anything. So, and then obviously you go to the likes of France or Italy and you go into pull into the gas stations there and there's they're making salads in a deli over there. So, they're another extreme. But it is interesting. It's what our environment is around us. And if we have no other choice other than...
It's incredibly complicated. I have no idea what the answers are. It's not my public...
Yeah, I know.
Not involved in public health.
If anyone knows anyone that I could speak to about that, I'd love to get someone on to the podcast about how we could make these changes when it comes to food and the environment in which we're growing up in, and where our children are growing up in as well. Have we said everything that we want to say? Is there anything else that you'd like to...
The only thing you mentioned there was alcohol.
Oh yes, we forgot about alcohol.
I'd
be upset now if I walked out of the studio and we hadn't mentioned it, because it's Friday. So alcohol, let's talk. Apparently now they're saying no amount of alcohol is considered to be healthy, but that doesn't mean that...
How are you defining health there? Like, for our direct, like, physiological health, like, yes. Like, there's no, even that, like, glass of wine thing, like, that's that's been shown to not be true. Right?
Oh yeah, so we used to say that a glass of wine's healthy, but it's healthy, yeah, or good for you, but that's been refuted.
Yeah. So, but then, like, and this is all very hard to measure, right? That's why there is no study showing this. But, like, if I want to go for 2 pints tonight, I haven't seen my friends in a year. Like, surely that's beneficial for my health. I get to go see my friends, right? Obviously, yes, you could pick a more healthful activity, like maybe go do I don't know, sauna, an ice bath or something. But so it's very hard to say.
Affect that. That's what.
Yeah. So, and like, listen, alcohol is a big part of our culture. Like, all you have to do is go to a rugby match or something, and it's sponsored by alcohol. Or alcohol companies. So it's not going to go away. Boring old answer. Where are you at this point? Meet yourself where you're at. How much alcohol am I drinking in the week? We know that, none is the best for our, say, physiological health. So how can I try reduce? I don't know. I don't even know the units. I should. That's probably pretty embarrassing as a healthcare professional. But I don't know what the units that you're meant to have per week.
Is it 7 or 14? Is it 14 for a woman, 21 for a man? Do you know what? I'm going to look them up now, so we actually have it. I'm going to look at I'm going to look at the HSE website as well, because we're not going to just Google something, just so we can, like, iterate it. However, I think sometimes it's difficult to measure as well, because that, what is a glass of wine to people? Like, when you have massive glasses of wine, and if you're filling them up. Yeah.
So, like, these guidelines, like, they're looking up, like, these are public health messages. They're broad guidelines. So people coming to me are looking for individual advice. So that's why I always meet them where they're at. How can we get you down to that level? And there's I haven't had that conversation with people in years, and it kind of embarrasses me that I used to. That I'd always be saying, like, this is your lowest calorie option. You should have this. Like,
that's so interesting that you've just said that. That you used to do that, and you're a bit embarrassed. But I think that's brave of you to say that too. You're like, I realised I was giving people shit advice.
Yeah.
Or, like, not shit advice, but just, like, is it a more patronising advice, saying something like that, rather than what you're doing now, which is, like, really coming to the table with them, trying to get them to change their mindset?
Probably. And probably just not that helpful, and makes them feel bad if they drink more than that or drink different drinks. So it's a sign of growth, though. If you're looking back, and there's loads of things 5 years ago, like, this podcast would have been completely different. If you interviewed me, like, I
know, and it's interesting. I'm sure 5 years ago I probably would have been saying different things too.
Yeah,
I certainly wouldn't have been talking as much about vaginas. So Ireland wouldn't have been able to handle me 5 years ago. We've progressed a little bit since then. So it's now 11 standard drinks for women, whatever that means, and 17 for men. And I remember up to a few years ago, it was definitely 14 and 21, I think.
Okay.
And then have 2 to 3 alcohol-free days per week. Drink no more than 6 standard drinks on any one occasion. Yeah. And I'm not going to tell you what a standard drink is, guys. You can look that up yourself. HSE units alcohol will get you there.
So it's like the World Health Organization exercise guidelines. Like, they're a broad guideline.
150 minutes, isn't it? I learned that from Albert.
Yeah.
Broad guideline, but is it really, like, it's a guideline, but we can probably do better.
Yeah, exactly. We can always do better. And same thing with the alcohol. Like, you can always do a little bit better, but you're just trying to meet the person where they're at and show them the guidelines to say, like, how do you think, could you possibly get here? Could you not? What's the barriers? So
yeah, fair enough. So what piece of advice would you give young people today, Josh?
Oh, well, first,
you're a young person yourself.
Exactly. That was my first part of my answer.
Oh, I took the words out of your mouth.
Yeah, I am young. So I suppose I can only talk to people who are younger than me, right? So I'm 28. And thought about this a good bit. And you want to be careful that you're not, like, patronising, or that you obviously listen what I'm about to say. So what I'm going to say is, if you've any choice in the matter, right, when you're finishing your leaving cert or doing your leaving cert, pick a career that you're somewhat interested in, passionate about, that you think there'll be benefit from, like I'll be helping people, or so follow your passion, right?
Yeah.
Because I calculated there yesterday, right? So we work, when you add up all the hours you work in your life, right? It's obviously going to vary massively for different people, but about 15 years.
15 years in your total life that you work.
So 15 years of constant working. That doesn't include anything to do with, the stress after work, before work, all the time you think about it. So it's a huge part of our life, right? And happiness is really the ultimate metric. Like, why do we care about anything else, right? We want to be happy. So I think to help you be happy, it's to try, pick, maybe it's social media. Like, look at you. You've created this amazing career out of social media. So there's loads of jobs in social media. You can brand yourself and sell yourself, and there's value to that. Maybe you're interested in that. Maybe you're interested in planes. Like, can you do engineering? Can you be an air traffic control manager? Can you be a pilot? For me, it was exercise, and I went down the exercise route, and that worked well for me. And I'm going to caveat this point by saying that, do you ever hear the song by Baz Luhrmann, right, called "Everybody's Free to Wear Sunscreen"?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that song,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
One line he says in it is that advice is a form of nostalgia, right? So I'm giving advice here because, why I'm giving this advice is because it worked for me.
Okay.
So you have to take that into account. It might not work for you. And like any advice you hear when you're young, just always remember that, that person's probably saying that because it's worked for them, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for me. So
it's worked for them, or it hasn't worked for them, and they are retrospectively looking back on it going,
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the song goes on to say that.
Yeah. Okay.
So everyone actually should go listen to that song as well. Baz Luhrmann, I don't know, I'm probably messing up the pronunciation. Everybody's free to wear sunscreen.
Okay. That brings back a nostalgic time in my life as well, actually, but I won't discuss it.
Right.
So, and what is the meaning of life, Josh?
Listen, I don't know the meaning of life, right? No one knows the meaning of life. But what I get meaning from is from really connection. And I get that a lot from my job. Like, there's nothing, you get bored of people telling people they love their job. I do love my job, and there's nothing, there's very few times in life where I get that nice feeling, or that same feeling, than after I've done a consultation with someone and they've never exercised before and they've never tried to change their nutrition, and you just get that kind of goosebumpy feeling when you're helping someone, when you're connecting with someone. So I think the meaning of life for me, or what I get meaning from, is just connection with people.
I've had a couple of people on to say that. They said connections with people too.
Yeah. So,
and that's what life is about, though, isn't it? It's connecting with other people. Like, we're a species that thrive on companionship and relations with other people. Some people love 100 people in their lives, and some people like one. But
yeah. So that's. I'm sure, again, if you ask me in 10 years' time,
well, do you know what? We might just get you in.
The 10-year anniversary. I'm sure my answer would be completely different.
Yeah. Okay, Josh, it was an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. I know that people will have learned so much from that.
Good. Thank you.